So we're here at the ranch for Save Them Dog training. That's where the actual kennel license is under. And then we also have a collaboration with Underdog Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization.
And that's comprised of Stephen Baldwin and myself. Our mission is to essentially try to encourage rescues to take large breed behavior dogs, dogs that have severe behavior issues, more of them out of the shelters, since those are the dogs that really are the ones that get killed.
There's a lot of shelter dogs out there who do not exhibit the best behavior, and it could be for all sorts of reasons. But for many reasons, and I would say based on my 11 years doing this, I would say it's fair to say about 70% of the dogs that are exhibiting behavior symptoms at a shelter, it's strictly almost always environmental, meaning the location and what they're experiencing in terms of stress, in terms of triggers, is causing enough cortisol to pump through their brain that it impacts their decision-making abilities and they make bad choices. But if you pull that dog out, let them decompress, like these dogs here, there's like 3-4 dogs behind you just napping right now that are all behavior cases. Let them do that, let the cortisol drop, bring the dopamines and the endorphins up, give them time to settle, and then see what kind of behavior you actually have. Many times you don't have a serious behavior case.
Definitely a higher level of intensity with training and involvement with the dogs, and usually their innate personality can shine through after some decompression here.
We focus specifically on those behavior cases, and we want to be that go-between from the shelter and the rescue and the home, where the dog can come to us, get some of that special work done, use some of our highly trained helper dogs, use the 10 acres that backs up to miles of undeveloped land and equestrian trails. We can go hiking for hours in a completely trigger-free zone and get that dog to a point where it can safely be adopted out.
So one of the other things that we do provide is there's a small number of dogs that can't be managed out in the general public. So we do have some dogs that are sanctuary dogs. And we will also take a very small number of dogs from rescues and private clients for sanctuary. And what we consider sanctuary is essentially until the dog can be safely placed. And sometimes it cannot be safely placed. And so we recognize that, but what we are providing here is a place where they can actually live out their years.
And we do work with dogs who come to us where we hope that the end result is that we can get them to a safe place where they can go out and be adopted, even if it's an adoption with some specific requirements. There's some dogs that we adopt out where we have to have owner compliance. They have to sign a contract saying the dog's always gonna have a muzzle on when it meets new people, or the dog will never go to a dog park. But even those special needs dogs, they can be adopted out if we can figure them out and realize kind of what sets them off. But then we get to these dogs that I personally call unstable dogs, for lack of a better term. A better term doesn't exist yet in the dog training world because not enough people work on these dogs. We have dogs who you go through all of the decompression, all of the training, and you work through all of the issues, and for whatever reason that we don't know yet, we haven't gotten that far into their brains, it doesn't work, it doesn't stick, or it works and then it doesn't work because it kind of is like this yo-yo effect and you can't get stable, reliable behavior. And in that case, many times we've put 5 or 6 months of work into this dog. What are we gonna do, just put it down? If we can keep the dog and we are safe and the dog is safe and the dog can have like a friend or two to hang out with and the dog can go for hikes in the desert and the dog has a quality of life, then we will give that dog what we call a sanctuary. But the important thing for us is quality of life.
You think about the cost of boarding a dog, it takes a tremendous amount of manpower and time, and if the life of a dog is 14 years, if we take a dog that's 2, that's 12 years. So that comes at a fairly high cost. When we're trying to work with this subset of dogs, which is literally at their last 5%, there's going to be a subset of them that truly do have those innate behaviors as opposed to just due to kennel stress from the shelter.
The reason why we have two entities here, we have the Save Them Dog Training LLC, a for-profit business, and the Underdog Alliance as a nonprofit is, I've been doing this for 11 years. When I first left my shelter as a shelter director, I formed a nonprofit. I did a lot of work, a lot of good work, a lot of wonderful life-saving work, and then I went online and said, please give me money, please support me. And I was always chasing donations just for the basics, just to give the dogs the basics so I can make sure they can go to the vet and be fed. And I realized that that's not a good, sustainable, long-term way to do this, especially if we're talking about dogs who are not going to be, pulled from a shelter then adopted in a couple of weeks. They may stay for months or even years on end. I knew we had to come up with a sustainable source of income. So we created Save Them Dog Training so that we can have enough income to make sure that the property is always paid for, to make sure that the food is always there, to make sure that the vet bills are always covered. That's what Save Them Dog Training covers. On the other end though, we have basically a 10-acre facility that had nothing but a house and a yard, and we've had to create everything else through the donations and the nonprofit work to create all the stuff around the barn, all the kennels, to revamp all of that, and then also to hire the staff who can provide the enrichment. Some people say, well, why don't you just have volunteers? We do have volunteers. The problem with volunteers is that when they have something else that they have to do, they're gonna go ahead and drop their volunteer commitment. These dogs aren't okay with people dropping commitments left and right because there's other things to do. We need these dogs to be someone's priority. That requires staffing. We can't, and most rescues don't have paid staff. I don't get paid from Underdog Alliance. I have a salary of $0 from Underdog Alliance. My salary comes from my own business as a training business, but we do need to invest in salaries for the employees who can provide the enrichment. We have to invest in salaries for the volunteer coordinator who can make sure that we have a rotating group of volunteers to offset those costs. We need donations to make improvements. We have to double the size of this cottage so we can have a bigger indoor training facility. We have to repair damages all the time. We have to repair currently 9 different roofs up at the barn because of some recent wind and rain damage. So there's a lot of things that we have to do, but the biggest thing that the donations will help with will be capital improvements, expansions. We have the room actually for an entire new barn. We could actually double our capacity if the funds were there. So expansions, capital improvements, and then the staffing to make sure that we can be a sanctuary slash rescue slash not a rescue slash whatever else you want to add on that still makes sure that every dog here has a quality of life. If I have to go teach a seminar or teach a class somewhere or go down to a shelter, I can't leave and not have 2 or 3 other people working here nonstop, and that takes money, and that's where the donations are really most needed.